Greetings and welcome back to Pseudo's journey through the Japanese air tech tree in War Thunder, a series of subpar guides made for unskilled free-to-play players by an unskilled free-to-play player. In this most magnificent of not-a-guide guides, we shall be hazarding a look at the B5N2, a dive/torpedo bomber at BR 1.3 in rank 1 in the 4th line of the Japanese air tech tree. So, you know how I've been harping on about how awful the Japanese air tech tree is for CAS, and that should never be used for such under any circumstances? Well, allow me to introduce you to the B5N2, a plane in the Japanese air tech tree that can't perform any role whatsoever except for CAS. Now, before we all have a heart attack from the shock at what was just said, please note that this is a clear outlier in the tech tree. If at any point you begin doubting that the Japanese air tech tree is one of, if not the worst tech trees in the game for ground CAS, please only look at every other plane in the tech tree, the amount of bombs they can carry, and the size of the bombs they can carry. If this is still not enough to dissuade you, take a deep breath and name out all the American, Soviet, and German planes in their base tech trees that can carry any sort of guided air-to-ground weaponry. Once that is done, name out all the Japanese plane that can do the same. You should have your lack of faith in the tech tree restored after this exercise. Moving on from that existential crisis, let's look at the actual performance of the plane. Starting out strong, this plane turns ridiculously well. It turns so well, in fact, that on console it becomes almost uncontrollable at times. This thing can turn on a dime and subsequently can over-G the living daylights out of your pilot if you're not careful. I've found almost no monoplanes that can match its turn performance when it hits its speed sweet spot, and even some biplanes might actually have trouble matching you if you plan ahead. The energy retention is also fairly good for a dive bomber, allowing you to get quite a few excellent turns out of your plane. The speed of the plane is decent for this tier, allowing you to outrun most biplanes. However, do note that you are a bit slower than some of the faster monoplane fighters, so keep that in mind. However, you should be able to outrun most non-fighter planes at this BR, which is a mercy. The durability of this plane is nothing to write home about, but it's actually a fair bit better than many of the other light Japanese planes at this rank. I can normally take a few hits with this plane before going down. Similarly, its climb rate is nothing special, but it more than gets the job done. I will note that it does have a little bigger hitbox than most fighters, but it's generally an unnoticeable amount in combat. The rip speed is fairly high at 555-ish kilometers per hour, so you can take it into some pretty steep dives safely. This plane also has the benefit of having a full air spawn and air RB, which is always a benefit and gives you a massive energy advantage on most other planes. The mechanization of the plane is quite simple overall. It has relatively fast gear control and decent landing and takeoff flaps that rip at about 300 kilometers per hour. It even has combat flaps that can be deployed up to 400 kilometers per hour, increasing this thing's crazy turn performance even more. Like most other small Japanese planes, it has an arrestor hook for carrier landings for all those non-existent times you'll get to land on or take off from a carrier. One downside is that it doesn't have an air brake, which is rather pesky for performing accurate dive bombing maneuvers, so you will have to watch your approach on enemies a little bit more than some other dive bombers. Alright, so, from what we've seen so far, the B5N2 has incredible turn performance, a relatively strong engine for its BR, good energy retention, a decent climb rate, and a full air spawn. This is sounding like one of the best fighters at this BR already, plus as I've said, it has good CAS capabilities for this rank. So what's the catch? This plane has no forward guns. This annoys me to no end, as you have one of my personal favorite airframes in the entire game, and you manage to remove the weapons from it so that you can't even dogfight in it. My disappointment is immeasurable, and my first 5 minutes playing this plane were ruined. The B5N2 does sport a single 7.7mm Type 92 dorsal machine gun turret with 1,000 rounds of ammo. This machine gun effectively does no damage whatsoever, to the point that your entire bank account would have to be sacrificed to the snail to get more than a hit on the enemy. Not only that, but the majority of its effective area of attack is blocked by your plane's vertical stabilizer, the big tail thing sticking up on the back of your plane. For all practical purposes, this gunner is absolutely useless. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about where the B5N2 really shines. Its ordnance. For a plane this agile and at this battle rating, the B5N2 has some really quite excellent munitions that it can carry, so let's go over each one and its use cases. It can carry 6 60kg Navy Type 97 No. 6 bombs, 2 250kg Navy Type 98 No. 25 bombs, 2 250kg Navy Type No. 25 Model 2 bombs, 1 800kg Navy Type No. 80 Model 1 bomb, 1 800kg Navy Type 99 No. 80 AP bomb, 1 835kg Type 91 Model 2 torpedo, or 1 850kg Type 91 Model 3 torpedo. The 60kg bombs are for high-precision ground strikes, as it will pretty much take a direct hit to take out any tank, even the open tops at this battle rating. The 250 and 800kg bombs are practically nukes at this tier. The two 250kg bombs you can carry can take out nearly anything, and the 800kg bombs feel like they can remove an entire zip code at this BR. As you're starting to learn how to use bombs in a CAS role, again, a skill that you will likely not use too often in this tech tree, I would recommend the 800kg bomb. You need effectively no skill to use it, and it can rack up some very nice multi-kills at this BR. The downside is that you only get one drop, so use it wisely. After you get some practice with the 800kg bomb, I'd recommend switching to the two 250kg bombs. These bombs are almost as effective at this rank due to the very lightly armored tanks, and you have the added benefit of getting 2 drops with them. Overall, either of these loadouts can make you a major nuisance at this tier in ground RB. Remember that you do have a bomb sight, so there's no need to blind drop them either. For naval CAS, you get 2 torpedoes and an AP bomb. As you probably haven't encountered an AP, or armor-piercing, bomb before, they are bombs with more armor penetration, but substantially less explosive filler. They are intended mainly for ships, as you need a more direct hit to kill enemies, and they're made in a way that the actual bomb impact is more deadly, allowing it to pass through more heavily armored vehicles, like ships, or maybe even bunkers. The Model 3 torpedo is nearly identical to the Model 2 torpedo, the only difference being their explosive power. The 3 has more, so take the 3 whenever possible. The torpedoes are very slow, sadly, and only have a range of 2 kilometers. However, I'd never drop them more than 1 kilometer away as they're so slow. The good news is that a hit from one of these torpedoes will take out any ship at this tier. They will tear anything they encounter in half without giving the enemies a single hope for survival. The enemy ships will seemingly divide via forced explosive mitosis when hit with one of these. However, aiming them is incredibly tricky. Against AI destroyers in the test drive, I didn't hit anything for my first 9 drops. They are very difficult to aim and will require practice. I recommend aiming ahead of a destroyer by about 3 to 3.5 ship lengths for every kilometer away they are, and just pray that they don't turn before it hits them. I've honestly found that the 800kg AP bomb is more effective for most targets, as it can annihilate many ships at that BR. I would definitely use it when attacking gunboats or PT boats, as if you try to hit them with a torpedo, they will laugh at your pitiful attempts as they drive donuts around it. Torpedoes for slow and heavy ships, AP bombs for the rest. Simple enough. On to the playstyle for this plane. This plane excels at both naval and ground CAS, and should be used as such. Your main playstyle will be constant avoidance. If an enemy wants to dogfight you, there's really nothing you can do to kill them. Remember, you have no guns that are worth your time using. Your best course of action is to use your insane maneuverability to dance around the enemy fire and lead enemies close to your team's AA or fighter planes. You can't kill enemies, but you can distract them long enough to let someone else do the task. Utilize whatever there is in your environment to survive in this thing. If you are dead set about taking this plane into air battles, your only real course of action is bombing bases. Thankfully, you do have an air spawn, so you are pretty much guaranteed a safe drop to your desired base and back in this thing. Only the 800kg bomb will fully destroy a base, but the other bombs don't do too badly. As this is the only thing you can do in air battles though, I would recommend only playing air battles with this thing to spade it, as bombing bases does give you a lot of RP at this BR. I also at some point tried another tactic where I flew very low over light enemy convoys and pulled the nose of the plane up so that the plane was perpendicular to the ground. After this, I tried to use the tail gunner to take out the vehicles. This barely worked, but I did get a kill or two on very light enemy AI units. Well, it's kind of fun, it's an utter waste of your time. Just use this thing for CAS after you've gotten all the modifications. You'll have way more fun that way. The takeoff and landing procedures are quite simple. You can't take off from the runway as quickly as some other Japanese aircraft, so you'll have to build up a little more speed before pulling up. This is only by a very negligible amount though. Landing is simple too, as this plane has very low stall speeds and a decent landing gear. You can land anywhere between 125 and 250 kilometers per hour just fine. The landing flaps help burn excess speed quite nicely under 300 kilometers per hour. Again, the possibility for carrier landings does exist, but it will likely never happen. If this magical event does occur to you, all you have to do is land a little bit slower, between about 125 to 175 kilometers per hour if you can manage. For takeoff, just remember to use your flaps to make it a little easier. When talking about planes that the B5N2 has to look out for, it needs to be wary of every other plane in the game. Even the lowliest of biplanes pose more of a threat to you than you do to them. Always plan a way out and never engage an enemy under any circumstances. That's all the advice I can give you. Avoid all enemy contact and you'll be good to go. At the very least, you can outrun biplanes and outturn monoplanes. So use these two tactics to your benefit as you see fit to at least survive if an enemy does force a fight. The visuals of this plane are very nice in my opinion. It has the standard green paint job, but there are a lot of added red and white lines and highlights all over the place. This combined with the overall very slick look of the plane for this BR makes it one of my favorite looking planes in rank 1 out of any nation. Period. It's honestly one of my favorite Japanese prop planes to look at. It has no additional skins, but they are not at all needed. Looking at the cockpit of the B5N2, it seems relatively decent for the plane. Remember, I really never play first person, so this is all a subjective view from somebody who has no idea what they're talking about. The cockpit does have a decent amount of bracing, but visibility isn't the worst. Remember, you won't be dogfighting a lot on this plane, as you can't dogfight, so incredible visibility is not a necessity. The forward visibility is decent, and you don't have any sort of gun sight, still preferable to the gun sight on the Kika. One of the most major things I noticed was actually how much the wings obscure your vision. The wings on this plane are actually pretty massive, and with how the cockpit is situated, they block most of your sideways visibility. Looking at the cost of the B5N2, it shouldn't break the bank. It costs 2,900 RP to research and only 700 SL to purchase. The cost to slot is 200 SL, bringing up the total cost to only about 900 SL to buy and slot the plane. The repair cost is a little higher than some of the planes we've seen so far, but by a negligible amount, at a fairly low 198 SL when fully spaded. For the modifications, I would work on rushing the bombs first. Sadly, if you don't play naval, you have to research torpedoes first. However, as you unlock new modifications fairly quickly, you shouldn't be stuck bombing bases with the 600 kilogram bombs for too long. Focus on upgrading your engine power along the way, as you want to be able to outrun as many enemies as possible. Also, it's in your best interest to pretty much ignore the dorsal gunner upgrades, as they won't magically make it not useless. The total cost for all the modifications is 2,970 RP and 905 SL. Overall, that's pretty cheap. Honestly, you really don't even need any of the upgrades except for the torpedoes, bombs, and engine modifications if you want to spend even less. That's all I have for you on the B5N2. I'll say it for possibly the last time in this entire series, but this plane is an absolute monster for CAS at its BR, and there are no planes that can compare in its usefulness for CAS until, well, ever in the Japanese air tech tree at the moment, so enjoy it. You'll learn that the dive bombers in the Japanese air tech tree never actually get better munitions, they just keep getting upgraded airframes. So get good with these weapons, as you'll be using the exact same bomb loadouts until you hit rank 5 or so. I'd be honored to see you next week, where we'll be covering the other substantially worse dive bomber at the same BR that does at the very least show us the mercy of having forward armaments, albeit useless ones, the D3A1. Whether you're there or not, I thank you for tuning in today.